Hi, I'm Christopher Walker with Closely Observed Literature. In this video I'm going to very quickly talk about two books by Geoffrey Moorhouse, who's the travel writer that I've talked about on this channel before. The first book of his that I want to look at is To the Frontier. This is an interesting book in that it covers a lot of the same sort of territory that was explored by Eric Newby in A Short Walk in the Hindu Kush, which I think I'll be reviewing later in this series. It's a lot more up to date, obviously. Newby travelled to that part of the world in, was it the late 40s, early 50s, something like that, around the same time as Wilfrid Thesiger, whereas Moorhouse went there in the early 80s. So a completely different landscape, certainly with the presence of the Soviets and all of the fighting that was going on. It's a really fascinating exploration of the place. Very detailed in terms of the kind of geopolitical situation as much as anything else. So if you're interested in Pakistan and the kind of the northeast passage, places like that around the north of India, going into Afghanistan, then this book is definitely one that I would recommend. It might seem like it's old and out of date, but it certainly isn't when you really think about it. However, if you really want to get stuck in with a glorious piece of Moorhouse, then I'm going to recommend The Fearful Void. This is a magnificent book, definitely due a reprint, unless there is one already. I mean, this is an old book that I picked up on the second-hand website awesomebooks.com. The Fearful Void then was Moorhouse's idea to travel west to east across the Sahara, and in fact there's a map early on in the book, you can see here, showing the path that he wished to take. Suffice to say, he doesn't make it, but it's still a nice long book all the same. So this was brilliant. He really gets into it properly. He wants to know how to get himself a camel or a train of camels, almost like a little caravan to cross the Sahara. He has to find people who will guide him. He has to buy the supplies along the way. So there's a lot of the human element that I really appreciate. He understands that he's approaching this with the whole kind of white boy Western privilege, and he has to overcome that to an extent. But at the same time, he is still sufficiently cynical about the way things are that he gets to the heart of the sort of characters that he encounters. It's a really interesting book in terms of what it shows about human endurance, and how when we're put into one of these sort of situations, or we put ourselves into a situation like this, we really have to work or strive as hard as possible to succeed. But also we have to understand when we can't, when we have reached our limits and we shouldn't push any further because we would risk death. Now this book and this book, they're great, but they really show the progression of Moorhouse as a writer. As I mentioned, this one was like 1984, this was 1972, so there's like a 10-year gap between the two. If you want to see a writer develop, there's no better way to do it than to take two similar pieces of writing and read them one after the other. So there we go, a very brief look at a couple of Geoffrey Moorhouse books. Really recommend both of them, but if you had to choose one or the other, definitely The Fearful Void is a timeless classic, I would say. So if you enjoyed that little video, be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate it if you can do that. The way that YouTube works with its algorithms is that if people are engaging with the videos, even if it's negative engagement, it seems, even if you leave a comment saying, "You suck, you don't know what you're talking about," actually seems to work in my favour. I'm not suggesting you do that, but, you know, it's better than nothing, I suppose. So until next time, keep reading.